Happy Valentine's Day to you. Glad you're tuning in. We're going to be covering a couple of chapters tonight in Genesis, chapters 33 and 34. Welcome to everybody else. Happy Valentine's Day to you all. It always makes me giggle. Who in here says Happy Valentine's Day? Put the M in there. Where does that come from? Why do people say that? Is it just a pronunciation thing or? Oh boy, I can interpret that a couple of different ways. He said the reason people say Valentine's Day is because when you're married, when you're in love, you're doing time. Where I come from, when you hear I'm doing time, that's not a positive thing. Oh, yeah, the time of your life. Gotcha. Yeah, you crawled out of that hole real fast. That's funny. Everybody good? Everybody happy? It's a little chilly out there today, but it was a pretty day at that. Got a little snow yesterday, and then it went away quickly. That was kind of nice. It snowed this morning? When? What time? Oh, yeah. I wasn't out yet. No, I wasn't in bed. I was probably in the shower. We got some interesting chapters tonight. Chapter 34 is a tough one, boy. It's sad. It's interesting. 33 is kind of fun. 34, not so much. So that said, let's pray. God, you're good. Thanks for just a chance to dive into your words, the church family. Thanks for the way that you unpack it for us. Thank you that we can have an open conversation without feelings getting hurt or feeling squished. Thank you that we can just talk, have a conversation. But ultimately, Father, we want to hear from you. We want to know what you want us to see and to hear and to understand. And so we ask from the giver of wisdom, we ask for wisdom and discernment and understanding as we unpack your word. Thanks for this time. Pray you will bless the conversation, bless the way that we say things and the way that we hear things. But ultimately, may we hear your voice in Jesus' name. Amen. All righty. Chapter 33 and chapter 34 is where we're going to be. Last week, we left off with Jacob wrestling with what some would propose that it was like a pre-incarnate Christ. Will, did y'all not find him? You didn't find him? It is. There's no Go Group meeting tonight. I just found that out because you told me. Well, hey, you get to be with me. Could be worse. Maybe. Could be worse. He wrestled with God. He wrestled with Christ and prevailed. He actually did really well. They wrestled through the night. Come morning, Christ is like, got to go, man. Got to let me go. Not that he was really struggling with him because he simply took his finger, touched his hip, knocked it out of joint. But I love the fact that God lets us wrestle with him. I love that. I have had plenty of wrestling matches. Never intended on really winning, but I wanted to know. I wanted to understand. I wanted to be better. And so it's just interesting how that happens. Jacob has his name changed. His name is going to be Israel. But for the sake of consistency, I'm going to continue to call him Jacob just because we'll start talking about the children of Israel later on. It's a little easier if we just keep him at Jacob. His name will actually be used a little different a little later, but for now we're going to use Jacob. So first 7 verses. Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming, and with him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maidservants. And he put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then he crossed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes and saw the women and children and said, "Who are these with you?" So he said, the children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the maidservants came near, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah also came near with her children, and then they bowed down. Afterward, Joseph and Rachel came near, and they bowed down. So Jacob obviously is preparing for his brother's arrival. He just happens to look up, and lo and behold, here he comes with his massive army, which is what Jacob is thinking that's getting ready to go down. We're getting ready to scrap. My brother still hates me. My brother's still against me. This can't go well. So as he sees them coming, he arranges his family in order of importance. He puts the maidservants and their children out front. Then he puts Leah and her children next. And then he takes the love of his life, Rachel, and his probably favorite son, which we know it is, Joseph, last. And he takes off. He heads in Esau's direction. And as he's walking towards Esau, which if he can see Esau, then Esau can see him, he's bowing to the ground 7 different times before he gets there. I don't know what the significance is of 7, except we know that 7 is the special number. But in this instance, I don't know that there's any significance except to show us that he really is trying to communicate to his brother before his brother even gets there. He's trying to show humility. He's trying to show, hey, I recognize you might be mad, but I'm a different guy. So as you can see, I'm trying to show you that. And again, he's still referring to Esau as Lord and that he is Esau's servant. But look at Esau's reaction. When Esau sees him, he runs to him. Now, maybe if Jacob sees his brother running to him, he's seriously stressing, like, oh man, he's not even waiting for the army to get here. He's going to take me out to begin with. But as soon as Esau gets there, he falls on his neck. So this isn't like your normal embrace. Like this is that massive bear hug. Like you haven't seen this person in forever and you're ecstatic to see them. And so he just latches on and he kisses him, which is a major, major move here. Communicates so much more than just a handshake or a fist bump or, hey, glad to see you. This is, I have missed you. I have longed for this day to reunite with you, and I'm glad that you're here. So he runs and embraces him. There's this enormous heart change, obviously, with Esau. Because in chapter 27, verse 41, if you'll remember, he swore that he was going to kill his brother the next time he saw him. That was his life goal. But he changed it because God changed his heart. In fact, he calls him brother. Not scoundrel, not double crosser, not, hey, you cheated me. It's brother. He recognized the relationship. And then Esau asks, who's all these people? Which I would imagine in maybe his mind, why isn't it just grouping? Why are they segregated the way that they are? But as we know, Jacob's being protective. He's being Jacob, and he's throwing the ones out to the wolves to see how Esau reacts. And he wants to protect those that he loves the most. And so each group comes through. He meets his sister-in-laws. He meets his niece and his nephews. And he finally gets to spend this time. But notice who Jacob says that they are. He says they are given to me by God. Now that's a different Jacob, right? This is the same guy that stole his brother's birthright through deceit. This is the same guy who worked some magic in getting some different lambs and goats. This is the same guy that tricked people all the time. And yet now he is recognizing fully that everything that he's accomplished, everything that he's gained, everything that he's done has been by God and God alone. So there's a portion at which when we throw that out there, it disarms people. It lets his brother know that, look, I didn't just do this on my own. I have this relationship with God, our creator. He has done this because I am his servant. So it's very well played by Jacob trying to disarm whatever may be coming, all of these assumptions that he has about his brother that really aren't true, not anymore. Any thoughts on those first 7 verses? Anybody intrigued as to when he brought them back over from the other side of the creek? Remember before he wrestled, he sent them away? And now they just magically show back up. And he separates them before Esau gets there. Any other thoughts, questions, smart remarks? Now, we have no idea how long it took Esau to get there, or how much time difference was there between the wrestling match and when he shows up. So it could have been days, hours, minutes. We don't know. So you're right. It could have been, well, why don't you come back over? I'm lonely. I miss you.
Did he bring him back, or did he go back?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
He could have sent them across just so he could have some time to himself to think of whatever.
Yeah, that's true, Mark. Yeah, he could have went over to be with them and then came back to meet his brother. Sure. In the grand scheme, doesn't really matter. But it is kind of fun to think about. Anything else? Any other thoughts? It is very yucky how he arranged his family. Those poor maidservants, they got nothing to do with any of this stuff. They were just maidservants doing what they were told. Yeah. Where your placement is. Know your place, woman. Yeah. Yeah, it's awful. It's not cool. Not cool at all. And poor Leah. I mean, I really feel bad for Leah, honestly. It's just awful. One more reminder. And then in the next chapter, it's even more reminder of how her family really is. It's pretty sad. It's a mess. It's a mess.
Knowing that your house is big, you have lots of children, that's a blessing. It's a big sign of wealth.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you say Esau had 2 wives? 3. He's got 3. He married the first 2 that gave mom and dad trouble, and then went and got another one afterwards, trying to do right, but still missed the mark. Yeah, and we don't know. I mean, 20 years has passed. He may have more, and who knows how many kids he has.
You know, if you really want to get back to somebody, it's like, oh, now you're married, so now you know my king. And if I only have 3 wives, you have 4.
Man, you went right back in that hole, dude. Anybody else? All right, let's keep going. 8 through 11. Then Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company which I met?" Remember that he sent like goats and camels and cows and all of these animals at different periods of time, staggered. And when he got there, when they met Esau, he's like, "What is going on?" And the servant said, "This is from your servant Jacob. He wants to give them to you. They're gifts." So now Esau has arrived, asks about the family, and then he says, "Dude, why'd you send me all this stuff?" And Jacob, he said, "These are to find favor in the sight of my Lord," which is code for, I got a lot of stuff, I want to share it so you don't kill me. That's really what that means. But Esau said in verse 9, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." What a massive change. This is the guy who lost his birthright to his brother. He's gained a lot of stuff. His brother is trying to give him more stuff. And if he really was still ill about that, he would have said, "You're right, all of that's mine." But he doesn't. He's like, "Dude, keep your stuff. We're good. I don't need it." Jacob said, "No, please, if I have now found favor in your sight, then receive my present from my hand, inasmuch as I have seen your face as though I had seen the face of God, and you were pleased with me. Please take my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me and because I have enough." So he urged him and he took it. So Esau questions all the gifts that he acquired on the way to meeting Jacob. And Jacob claims that they're these gifts to show kindness and generosity. Esau says, "I don't need them," but they're giving as a blessing, not as anything else. It's not to undermine. And Jacob makes an interesting statement, doesn't he? He says, "It's as if I'm seeing the face of God." Now, that's a big statement. Is he talking about his brother resembling God? Is he talking about what I've seen here? This is reflective of God. What I believe he's talking about is he's recognizing the inner working of God in Esau, his brother. He remembers his brother. He remembers that his brother wanted to kill him. He remembers how irate his brother was. He remembers his brother as this massive great white hunter that went out and just killed things and fed his dad. He knows his brother can take his life, but his brother is now excited to see him, elated to see him, happy that he has stuff. I don't need your stuff because I've got stuff. There's a heart change here, and Jacob simply says, it's as if I'm watching God work right in front of my face. I'm seeing the face of God right here because of love, of compassion, of kindness, and caring. And really, not taking the gift could be seen as a massive, massive insult. And so Jacob was like, please, please take the stuff. Let's jump on to 12 through 17. Then Esau said, let us take our journey, let us go, and I will go before you. But Jacob said to him, my Lord knows that the children are weak, and the flocks and herds which are nursing are with me. And if the men should drive them hard one day, all the flock will die. Please let my Lord go on ahead before his servant. Again, you're seeing the language here. I will lead on slowly at a pace which the livestock that go before me and the children are able to endure until I come to my Lord in Seir. Esau said, now let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, what need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. And Jacob journeyed to Succoth, built himself a house, made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the name of the place is called Succoth. So here's what's interesting. We see Jacob again being Jacob. Jacob is a little deceitful. He is a little less honest than what we would prefer. Esau says, okay, it's time to go home. You haven't been this way in 20 years. Maybe there's new tracks that we found or some dangerous spots that we know of. Let me lead you to where I'll make sure that we'll all get back safe and sound. Follow me, but we probably should go now. That's reasonable. They're meeting. Esau's natural assumption is he's coming home. He's going to come back to where we are. So he's going to follow me home. Let me show you the way. Let me lead you in because I'm glad you're home. Jacob says, no, I don't think so. We're going to move really slow. We got a lot of little kids. We've got a lot of animals that are nursing. And if we drive them too hard, they'll die. And I don't want to die. I don't want them to die. Notice he never mentions, I got a bad hip. Like this group of 400 people plus Esau, they're going to be moving. It's a bunch of guys. Well, Jacob has a family with kids that are probably a little older. There's 20 years past, so they're going to be older. He's got a lot of animals that are nursing, and he's got a bad hip. And he says, you guys are going to move way too fast. It's not going to be helpful to us. So please just let us go on our own pace. Again, notice the lack of honesty. He doesn't want to go back with Esau. But how in the world can he look his brother in the face and say, I don't want to go back with you after this warm welcome that he just got? So he is less than honest. Esau even goes a step further and says, I've got 400 people with me. I'll leave some with you to help you, to make sure that you get back safe and sound. And again, Jacob refuses. So Esau heads out to Seir, which is toward the south, which is where he was from. And Jacob is supposed to follow him. Well, if you don't look at a map, you won't know that Seir is in the south and Succoth is in the north. So Esau goes south. Jacob heads in the exact opposite direction to get away from his brother. Does that make sense? No, not at all. Not when you have this warm welcome, except the fact that we know Jacob. Jacob's going to do Jacob things. He is not going to put himself in harm's way. And seriously, Jacob could be thinking, maybe he's thinking, I don't know. Maybe he's thinking, well, my brother is tricking me to get me back. It's probably a trap, and I know he'll mistreat me later. There is nowhere in Scripture that says that or insinuates that. That's just me playing scenarios out because we know people. Do we not? We know how people think. These are human beings. And we also have read how Jacob is. He just thinks differently. However, think about the massive heart change that has happened in both these guys. Jacob has gone to generosity and humility. Jacob was not humble in the beginning, nor was he generous. He tried to take what wasn't his. Esau wanted revenge, but his heart has changed and he wanted to reconcile this relationship. So we have them separating, and that's kind of where that ends for there. So any thoughts on 8 through 17? Sure, Phil, it's such a great point, and it's a good lesson for us in a couple of ways. But yeah, I agree. I think he was living too much in the past because that's all he has to reference. And so there's something for us in that of we should be wary of the past, but we shouldn't live in the past. We should pay attention, have little red flags, but not exist there. We have to learn how to move forward with the past in view. But yeah, I agree.
There too, he might have thought family last
That's true. That's true, Phil. It could be he didn't want to ruin such a good thing that was going. I mean, he really does have a lot of people and a lot of stuff with him. And so he doesn't want to irritate his brother, maybe. Sure.
But he could be taking a gamble. Suckers could be in a bad area. I mean, he's been gone for 20 plus years.
Yep. We're getting ready to find out how awesome it is. Say it again.
We're all looking at Jacob and Esau and all of us here own conclusions about them. And so it's like, even though we're reading it, we don't know exactly what they did. But we know Esau's changed, we know Jacob's changed. And so when he says, go on, move forward, that's fine. Because he said, you know what? The Lord God has brought me this far. I'm just leaving everything to God. And maybe they were taken for something.
And that's such a great point because there's a lot of things that take place in here. In fact, we're going to address that in the next chapter. That is God telling them to do this, or is this them going on their own? And so one of the ways that I attack those type of questions or arguments is, what do we know based on Scripture already of how God works? So far, we know that God shows up and speaks directly to his people for what he wants them to do. I mean, that's very apparent in the first 32 chapters, and we know that he does it later on through Scripture. So it's safe, plausible to make the assumption that if we don't see that recorded, that it probably is more their own personal journey rather than something God is asking them to do. It's not a surefire gospel truth that's exactly the way it is, but it's easier to look at it and say, because of what we know, we can answer what we don't know. Does that make sense? But no, I agree. I think there's a lot of this that very well could have, in the wrestling match, God could have said, hey, I want you to go this place. Well, I don't want to go this place. No, you need to go this place. I don't want to go there. I want to go see my brother. I don't want you to go there. Like, we're not privy to those type of conversations. So yeah, I agree. Very plausible that it could be that God just wanted him to go north. And I mean, we know that Edom and the Edomites come from Esau, and they're not good people at all. Yes, sir. George.
So, he had history with his brother.
Mm-hmm.
He made a marriage with his brother, but they had history. So he didn't necessarily have to, live with him.
Sure.
Along the lines of, let's get a bed, it's over with, and then we're good. But I'm not going to stick around and have it happen again. I made it right. Now I'm going to go my way.
Yeah, George, that's a really good point, because I think sometimes, especially as believers, let's say you and I are best friends. Something happens, I hurt your feelings, I destroy you. But I come back, I apologize, we cry, we make amends, you forgive me, but you're always going to be a little distant from me. Not that we can't be friends, but it will never be like it was, because you need to be cautious. Yeah. Yeah, the pearls before swine is such a great reference, but because it wasn't written yet, it doesn't apply here. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. That was a dumb joke. Sorry.
Well, he could also end up angering Esau.
Sure.
Because he told him, I'll follow, but slowly. And then he goes, no way.
Yeah, I wonder how long it took Esau to realize he ain't never coming.
So that's another bill. I think all of us have had some family member. I know I do. And it's like, you want to see him, you want to go down, you want to talk to him. But it's like, if it doesn't happen, it just doesn't happen.
Sure.
There's no discontent with your whatever, because we've all aged, we've all gotten to this point in life. It's like, I still love you, everything's going to be great. And we know it's great, but I'm living here, you're living there.
Yeah.
And if we don't talk, that's fine, because the moment we do talk, everything is different.
Yeah, it's good. Any other thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Being disobedient by not returning to
So no, because the land is all of Canaan, which is where he's heading. He's just not going to the specific spot of where they were. But that was typical because they're kind of Bedouins. They're just not gypsies, but they travel a lot. I mean, they'll stay for a while until that land does not produce for them anymore, and then they'll pick up and roll. Anybody else? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they other nationalities own all this land that God is going to take over. Yep. Sure enough. Any other thoughts, questions?
Say like, he went to Saul, and he built himself a house, and then he gave it to Saul. You know, I don't get that. It's like, I wasn't doing for a whole house.
I don't know. I didn't come across that in my studies. Sorry. I don't know. There's a lot of times. I mean, think about when, like, especially reading chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Genesis, it says a lot of the same stuff. It's just an unpacking. Sometimes it's just for repetition's sake. Maybe his eraser didn't work and he forgot to erase that. And I don't know. All right. That's enough bad jokes. Here we go. Verse 18. Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. And when he came from Padan Aram, and he pitched his tent before the city, and he bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar there and called it El Elohi Israel. So Jacob kind of follows the lead of his grandfather Abraham. He buys some land, builds an altar, and says, God has blessed me. He's given me this land. And he calls it God, the God of Israel. And what's interesting is this is basically in the same general vicinity that Abraham pitched his tent to begin with. And this is kind of the end of that Jacob-Laban saga. We're going to move more into Jacob's children kind of moving forward. But that kind of ends that. So chapter 33 ends with where he places roots down outside of the city of Shechem, or no, just kidding. And so now we're going to watch what happens because he's pitched his family right there. Remember the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? Yep. Lot of the same, just a little bit different. So, verses 1 through 4. And Moses wastes no time. He gets right into a horrible event. Now, Dinah, the daughter of Leah. So remember, this is one of Leah's, Jacob's first wife, the one that he kind of got tricked into having to marry. It's her daughter, his daughter, whom she had born to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and violated her. Now, when you see the word violated, it is exactly what it means. He raped her. His soul was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke kindly to the young woman. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young woman as a wife." I don't know that I've ever said that. Get me that woman. So Dinah, Leah's daughter, goes to hang out with the daughters of Shechem, or Shalem, in the land of Canaan. Throughout the New Testament, we are strongly encouraged to be careful with who we hang out with, are we not? The same applies all the way through the Old Testament. They were not to intermingle or to hang out with anybody that was not of the children of Israel. They were strongly encouraged not to do that. Now, the children of Israel hasn't really been developed yet, but the principle applies all the way back through. Be careful who you're hanging out with. And this poor girl, this young lady, sees this probably illustrious city and wants to go in and hang out, and wants to be one of the girls. And maybe she's tired of hanging out with all the boys. We don't know about sisters yet, but we know that she's got a bunch of brothers. So she goes into the city to hang out with the girls because she's tired of the testosterone. She just wants to be around girls. So she goes and she meets the prince, Prince Shechem. The prince, I'm sure, is dashing to some degree. He's got money. He's probably dressed well, probably speaks well, knows how to woo the women, and he won her over quick. But not necessarily with his skill, but more force. He takes her, he lays with her, and he rapes her. Then he's overtaken madly in love with her. I've got to have her. Dad, you got to do something. I need this girl. Go get her. Now, unfortunately for her, based on that culture and what I was studying, one of the things that they talk about was when things like this happen to young ladies, it basically messes up their opportunity to have a valid marriage, because virginity was that gift that you gave to consummate that marriage. Well, now she has nothing to give. And so she's ruined. And most ladies at this point in time, their life is over. But this young man at least wants to do a noble thing, a right thing. He wants to marry this girl, except he's just going about it backwards. Sadly, during this time in their life, as they're moving through the land of Canaan, God didn't want them intermarrying. And so how are they going to make this work? They're supposed to be set apart as followers of God, not be followers of men or followers of others' gods. All of the laws will come later that deal with this, but this is what they're facing. What a dilemma. And now Shechem is going to send his dad to go to Jacob to ask for his daughter in marriage. And what is Jacob going to do? Well, let's find out. Verse 5 through 7. Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter. Now his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. Now, first off, if that were my daughter, I'm not holding my peace. He waited until the boys came back in. This dude's messed up. This is a problem, folks. Like that's not cool. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him, and the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it. And the men were grieved and very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing which ought not to be done. Jacob says nothing. He waits for the boys to come in. They lose their minds. They are in fiery grief, which any brother, any father, any mother can absolutely understand. And why does Jacob not say anything? So here, yeah, you got a thought?
It's not really forward yet. Maybe this gets messed up. Maybe he doesn't want to be in a fight.
That is very true. Because we don't know the timeline. We know that he finds out, the boys are out in the field, the dad shows up, and the boys show up after they hear what's going on. So there could be, and it really could be, dad shows up, so they're just having a nice casual conversation. Jacob may be seething, maybe wanting a whooping, but he remembered the last wrestling match that he had didn't fare well for him, so maybe I shouldn't do that again. So yeah, it could be. Maybe he's waiting for his boys to get back to reinforce. Absolutely. I'm sorry?
Planning on how to get him back.
That's true. Maybe he's learned his lesson in speaking too quickly. Maybe he's like, let's play this out. Let's see what happens. One of the writers suggests that maybe he was less concerned because it was Leah's daughter. And he doesn't really care for Leah that much. Now, that to me crushes me. Like, how in the world, dude? Who cares who it is? Like, that's awful. Whether it's your daughter or anybody else's daughter, like, hopefully that breaks your heart when you hear of that type of stuff. Surely it's not a told you so moment, told you not to hang out with those people, told you bad stuff's going to happen when you go to wrong places and hang out with wrong people. Is that an accurate thought? Sure, bad stuff can happen, but that is not the time to say it or to use that. Not at all. Not at all.
From the mother's point of view, you brought us here.
Yes, this is your fault. You stopped here. We should have went with Esau.
And then, can you imagine that whole conversation that's happening with the Lord? It's to trust the Lord in all things. And so you have to, it'll probably set a lot of people on fire when you say something. Like, this was
God's plan? God, yeah.
I mean, you're standing out in the field because you didn't know you want to roll somebody.
Yeah.
But you got to sit there and just take it and just let it unfold.
Yeah, that's a great point. The conversations, I'm sure, rolling through his head were deafening. Had to be. They would have been for me. Like, all the different scenarios, the way I'm going to tell this kid apart. Like, I'm going to pick one and do it. Sure. Could it be that he was more concerned about himself? I can't do anything. What is this going to look like? How are people going to see me now? And so this is where we get the first mention of Israel as a nation. And then Hamor, Shechem's dad. How embarrassing is it for this guy? Or maybe this was common thing, commonplace, no big deal. My boy had sex with another girl. That's normal. That's what's supposed to happen. And he had to come and ask, okay, how much for your daughter? And not knowing Jacob, not knowing the way that they do things, he didn't know what he was walking into. So there had to be some type of weird conversation going on. I don't know. Any thoughts on the first 7?
Well, also, we don't know that he knew his son raped her.
That's very true.
He may know he had sex with her, but
Sure.
consensual, or he may not even know that.
Sure.
He came to him and said, I want her.
Sure. At some point, though, it got around town because the brothers knew. They knew when they got back something happened. And that's why they were so mad.
Yeah, but that could also got to them from servants in Jacob.
Sure. Could have gotten from anywhere. Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Sure. And were they more mad? Because when you look at the very end of that, they are more upset that she had sex with a non-Israelite, a person outside their faith, not the fact that she was raped. Look at it. When they heard it, the men were grieved and very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing which ought not to be. It's not even about the forcefulness of it. It's just the fact that they were together. So maybe they don't know about the forcefulness of it. I mean, I would imagine at some point they do because of their reaction. The reaction is pretty strong. Yeah.
Are you talking about in verse 7?
Yeah.
Because, like, my translation has a little more outright. It says, committed outright vibration.
Gotcha. What version is that? Gotcha. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's insinuated in the way the New King James is written, but it's written a little more pleasant than just the straight up, they're mad because they raped her. Sure. I can't see it any other way. I can't see them being that upset because she slept with a guy that was outside their fold. It's got to be, they can't get this upset to go in and do what they're getting ready to do just because she slept with somebody. They have to know. In my mind, which is a very simple mind. Yes, ma'am. Blah. That's even worse. That's yucky. Which makes sense because 20 years, she wouldn't have been 20. She couldn't be. I mean, there was 4 boys in between there. And there was a period of time where Leah was barren. So, yeah, 13 to 15. That just gives me the Yeezys. That infuriates me even more, and I'm not even there. When they got married, yeah, sure. Yep. Which is crazy. You said 35, he was, and 13. First marriage? Wow. How long did they stay married? Gotcha. So he was an interesting individual, to say the least. Gotcha. People never cease to amaze me, man. Never. 28 and 13. Wow.
My grandmother was 15 and my grandfather was
30 and 15. That's wow. I'll be. And married, like they were married. Ah. I would imagine so. Wow. And your thoughts?
Usually the reason behind older men, younger ladies, because one was childbearing, another one that the man was established, and then he had property.
Sure.
And whatnot. So if anything happened to him,
She was taken care
they
of.
would shoot.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Not that it makes sense.
No, it makes sense, but yeah, still weird, different. Yes, ma'am.
The word itself in Hebrew is ambiguous enough that it's not really clear that it's clear that we know it in modern. The social implication of the act is more about definitions and versions of that. For example,
Yes.
you see like the fact that she's not really mentioned too often in the chapter.
Yeah.
The kind of the focus of the chapter it says a lot about like what the implication was. That it was more about honor and like family and
Sure. Actually, the Hebrew word talks about afflict and oppress. I actually put the definition in there. So it really does insinuate that it's more than just like a consensual sexual time, that it was a little more forceful than it should have been. But I agree. I think that's what the brothers are more mad about than anything, is that innocence is gone. Yeah, I would agree.
It's like when Mary becomes pregnant,
Yep.
I'm sure Joseph wouldn't have taken her unless God, because if God never came to him and said,
Sure. Yeah, he definitely contemplated not taking her. Sure. All right, let's jump to 8 through 12. So the boys come in. Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife and make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us and take our daughters to yourselves. So you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade in it, and acquire possessions for yourselves in it." Then Shechem said to her father and her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me, I will give. Ask me ever so much dowry and gift, and I will give according to what you say to me. But give me the young woman as a wife." Just the language makes me giggle sometimes, because I'm sure that's probably not exactly how it was said, but maybe it was. I don't know. So Hamor attempts to strike a deal. He says, "You're living with us. Why don't we just forget this whole nationality thing? Let's just intermarry. We'll marry your daughters. You marry our daughters. We'll share life together. We'll share stuff together. It's all good." And so he attempts to do this and to give him land. And what he doesn't realize is that God has already promised Jacob this land. This land is not for Hamor to give away because it's already been given away. But Hamor is also deceitful. We'll see a little bit later that really the point of what he's trying to do is not just to have everybody intermarry and have this one big happy family. He wants the wealth that Jacob possesses and maybe whatever skill set Jacob has to bring wealth to them as well. So he says, "Give me a price for the daughter." And at least Shechem is doing what some would call noble and fair and right. And he loves this lady, he loves this girl, and he wants to marry her. And so tell me what I need to do. So the brothers devise a scheme. Verse 13, "But the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father and spoke deceitfully because he had defiled Dinah, their sister." That's another way that we know that what happened wasn't what was supposed to happen. And what's interesting here is the brothers are taking over Jacob and Laban's spot. They learned how to be deceitful. Actually, nobody really has to teach us how to be deceitful. We're pretty crafty in and of ourselves. And they said to them, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a reproach to us." Again, they're bringing out this divide in nationality. "But on this condition, we will consent to you. If you will become as we are, if every male of you is circumcised, then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to us. We will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not heed us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone." And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. So the young man did not delay to do the thing because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. He was more honorable than all the household of his father. Hamor and Shechem, his son, came to the gate of their city, spoke with the men of their city, saying, "These men are at peace with us. Therefore, let them dwell in the land and trade in it, for indeed the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us as wives, and let's give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men consent to dwell with us to be one people, if every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised." I wonder if they had to explain what that is. Like, this isn't a normal act that they would be doing. So somebody probably raised their hand and said, "What does that mean?" Yeah. Yeah, that's true. He had no idea what was happening here. It can't be that bad. Yeah. Yeah. "Will not their livestock, their property, and every animal of theirs be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us." And all who went out of the gate of his city heeded Hamor and Shechem his son. Every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. So the brothers are beside themselves. They refuse to give them what they're wanting unless they follow the plan. They're upset about the intermingling. And again, they're not necessarily upset about the mistreatment, even though they know she was defiled. They're still upset about this whole intermingling. In fact, they say, we could do this, but we can't because you're not like us. You're not circumcised as we are. So if you want this to go down, if you really want to be like us, you have to have all the guys in the city be circumcised. That is the price for our sister and for this deal to go down of the intermarrying. Now, there's no intention of following through this. We know that just based on how Scripture is written. And again, we have to understand the purpose of circumcision. The purpose of circumcision was to set people apart specifically as followers of God. Nowhere in here do Jacob's sons say, hey, this is going to enjoin you with God. All they're saying is if you want us to be a part of your life and you want to be a part of our life, you've got to do this thing because that's what we have to do. It's a total sham. It's a total scam. It is a joke. And so they're setting apart this special thing that's really specific for the people of Israel, but now they're trying to bring these others along. So Shechem's excited, as well as his dad. They head back to the city gate where all the major business takes place, and they have a discussion with all the men. We can get all their stuff. They're going to come in with all their riches. We're going to be able to take from them and use what they've got. All we have to do is allow them, or we have to be circumcised. That will allow us into their little family, and we can intermarry and get their stuff. All the men agree. They're happy to have new women that they can meet and marry. They're happy to have all this stuff come upon them. And then Shechem, the prince, gets his girl. All sounds great, right? Let's finish it out. Now it came to pass on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, again, these are Leah's boys, they took his sword and came boldly upon the city and killed all the males. And they killed Hamor and Shechem, his son, with the edge of the sword, took Dinah from Shechem's house and went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city because their sister had been defiled. They took their sheep, their oxen, their donkeys, and what was in the city and what was in the field, and all their wealth and all their little ones and their wives they took captive, and they plundered even all that was in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and Perizzites. And since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed, my household and I. But they, the boys, said, should he treat our sister like a harlot? It's almost as if, Dad, you should have been the one leading this charge. So we've got Simeon and Levi, the sons of Jacob and Leah, react strongly in defense of their sister. They head into town on the third day when everybody is weak, sore, can't move, can't do anything, and they take them all out with their sword. They plunder the city. They take the women and children to themselves. They rescue Dinah. And then Jacob, the dad, is like, what have you done? You are going to get me whipped. All the surrounding nations are going to hear about us and how powerful we seem to be, and they're going to come and they're going to take us. This is your fault. You've created this. And what's interesting is he doesn't say anything about his daughter. He doesn't say anything about necessarily how they went about doing things, or the fact that, hey, great job, thanks for saving your sister, or man, I can't believe you did it that way. You should have done it a different way. All he's concerned about is, how's it going to make me look? What you have done is now going to make me look bad. How could you make me look bad? His only concern is with himself. There's some things that are just deeply embedded with us because that's how Jacob has always been. He's always been that way. And so sometimes it is necessary for us to go to God for him to dig those things out because we can't dig them out ourselves. And it almost seems as if he's more concerned with what the boys have done than what has been done to his daughter. It's almost like he doesn't even care about the defilement. He's just worried about what people are going to think about him and his family. Any thoughts on that before we get to that last little question and the last part of notes? Yes, ma'am.
So, they for them to make exercise and they do it. They were really wanting to get exercise and did finally.
No. The whole plan was so you got to remember, circumcision wasn't a thing for everybody else, only Jacob and his sons and Abraham and the children of Israel moving forward. They know what it's like. They know what it feels like. They know how long the recovery time is. They know how long these guys are going to be down. No, Jacob did not. This was the boys' plan. This was all the boys' plan, which is why Jacob is upset, because the plan that the boys have carried out is going to make Jacob look bad. Yeah. Yes.
I think that Jacob is ahead, and that by not taking appropriate
Leadership.
over the situation, avoid or an opportunity for
Yeah. In the absence of leadership, somebody's going to step up.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. Dad's not doing anything. We'll take care of it. But it could be Jacob got a bum hip. What's Jacob going to do? Well, he could do a lot. He could do a lot. Hey, boys, go do it this way. Yeah, absolutely. Correct. Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's two things going on. One is the assimilation from anyone
Mm-hmm.
and shepherd. The object of anything trying to take over another possession is to assimilate them in you, because if you're looking from a military standpoint,
No, right.
if you look at it, it's like, okay, these people have come in, they have A, B, C, D, we need that. However, how do we get them to be like us? Because we don't need that around here.
Mhm.
They need to adjust to us, and that's it.
Yes.
And so what they were doing from a military standpoint, I thought, that was it. They were looking to take their possession.
Yep.
Assimilate it, then no one's going to hear about them in their house. It's just us, and we're done.
Yep.
And now when it comes to Jacob, then now when you're not doing anything, sometimes you have to strategically, the event happens.
Sure.
But when you start thinking about it, it's like, okay, this happened. Okay, now how do we respond? Like this. What's going to happen after that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well then what happens after that? And then what happens after that?
Sure.
That's how it goes. So, and then you have to trust in the Lord for everything. So if we're not in his head, seeing everything that all the years are turning, and it's like, it's like if someone hits your child or does something, you go smack them back with no attack.
Sure.
And then,
Sure.
well, then it starts escalating more in that word again.
Yeah.
And as horrible as this is, it's one of the things that you probably have to understand what's happened, and cut it off, and just try to separate yourself from it.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think the assimilation portion of what you shared is super important, especially in light of how we move forward as believers. We have to be careful who we're assimilating with, because something is going to connect there, and they can easily, whatever it is we're assimilating can actually take over what we've got going. And it should be us having the influence and not being influenced. So yeah, I agree. And yeah, I also agree that we don't know what Jacob was thinking about, because he has learned that quick actions don't always play out well. And so maybe he is thinking, okay, it's a tragic situation. This is awful. So what are we going to do about it moving forward, rather than let's have a quick reaction? Sure. Yep. Any other thoughts? Yeah, George.
God put us on the front part to do this, so this is the trial and trying to live.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I was talking about early is we're not privy to, is God moving in these boys' hearts to do this? And that's kind of where the next question that I have written on our notes is, did the boys do wrong? Is what they did, because they're defending their sister, they're taking on a group of people that aren't like them, that have done something wrong to their family, and they're taking it on themselves. Is that wrong? And so Again, there's no mention that God said this, so it's plausible that he didn't, but it's also possible that he did. We just don't know it. There's no mention of really discussing with dad at all. It's just two boys. They took off and went and did their thing. And so did they react because their dad was more about protecting himself and not the family? So for me, especially when I was reading these guys, this is something that one of the writers brought out, which I thought was really, really good, and something that I've been having to actually deal with all week. In Romans 12, it says, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, you will heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So if we apply those thoughts, those principles there, for me, where I stand in this moment, I don't believe that the boys acted righteously. I think there's a way to do things and a way not to do things. And there's no consulting of God. There's no asking God, what would you have us to do? And is there a different way that things could have been carried out? Now, that's me being a Monday morning quarterback from the Sunday's game. That's easy to do. I'm not in the moment. I didn't come in from the field and hear my sister's been mistreated. I don't know how I would react. But as I look at my own life and as I experience things, there are opportunities and options that I can do to carry out my own justice. But is that needed, or can I do it in a way that actually allows the Spirit of God to do more than I could ever imagine? If that makes sense. Does that make sense? Is that easy? Nope, it's not. Yeah, that's a very good point there, Phil. Thanks for using my own words against me. It wasn't written yet. Paul's not alive yet. They're still acting in the natural man, 100%. Yep. Yeah. Because usually it was either God himself speaking to them or through an angel, legitimately like, hey, do this. These guys are just doing what they do. Sure. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Yes. Oh yeah, because of the intermarrying. So you've got to remember, this is a special group of people that are set apart through circumcision for God. They are not allowed to marry anybody that's not of that type of lifestyle. And so they're saying, we can't allow this engagement to happen. We can't marry your daughters and you can't marry our daughters unless you get circumcised. Then we'll be okay with it. Oh yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. At least that part. Could be, yeah. Sure. Yeah, we're not privy to what Jacob is thinking there. We just know what the brothers, how they react. And the father there is not necessarily Jacob, it's Shechem's dad, Horam. Yep. That's interesting. There's two options, good and evil. And oh man, my battery's about to die. For me, right here today, I just feel like they chose wrongly. Even though they're defending their sister's honor, which kudos to you. I just think maybe there's a different way to do that. Yes, ma'am. Terry, hold. I'm going to ask you to pause 1 second. Guys, my battery's about to die, so I'm going to close you guys out because we're pretty much done. We'll see you next week. God bless you.